Greetings everyone, and welcome to my YouTube channel. I'm your host, Captain Ryan. Today's YouTube video comes from Bastion is Blight, a username that I'm oddly okay with because it's absolutely true about that particular game mode. Bastion is in his Tier 8 Premium Soviet cruiser, the Mikhail Kutazov. It is the Trident map, it's Domination Match Mode, and it is a Tier 8 battle, with the exception of one failed division on the enemy team that is running a Tier 6 Leander and a Tier 5 Marblehead. As the battle gets underway here, Bastion is closest to the A cap point, so he's going to go ahead and head that direction. The Tier 8 Soviet cruiser, this premium cruiser, is actually technically a Chapayev, but it's an upgraded, updated version of the Chapayev from the late 1950s, early 1960s design, meaning that it's technically its own subclass. And unlike the Chapayev, it doesn't get radar, but it gets a smokescreen. And as we all know, a ship with smokescreen that has torpedoes and high explosive can be very deadly indeed. Right off the bat, Bastion runs into the fail division and starts by opening up on the Marblehead. The Marblehead's broadside on. Now the first salvo there was high explosive because that's what he had loaded, which is very good in this ship. But he switches over to the armor piercing and immediately begins to punish this Marblehead for sailing broadside onto him. The 6-inch guns on this ship have surprisingly good armor piercing, as well as surprisingly good high explosive. That, and the fact that it's got 12 shots. Bastion manages to punish that Marblehead for sailing broadside onto him by hitting from 3 citadels and securing his first kill of the game and a first blood in the game. Of course, now that the Marblehead is dead, he immediately runs into the Marblehead's accomplice, the Tier 6 Leander, who also, sailing broadside on, receives the same treatment and receives a citadel. This ship gets some pretty nice advantages, but of course, like her Soviet counterparts, she can be a bit squishy at times, and you definitely have to know how to play this ship. Now, against other cruisers, the ship's bow armor is actually pretty good, and even against some battleships as you close in, I've had times where I've watched shots bounce off the front of this vessel. The gun arcs are pretty reasonable, but she does have a fairly flat firing trajectory, and this of course means that she can't sit behind an island like her American and British counterparts and lob shells over the islands to cause pain and suffering among battleships in the distance. He pops the smokescreen as he sits inside the A cap point and starts to capture it, and this is mostly just so he's not going to get shot at by the big guns of the battleships off in the distance. And there are a lot of battleships off in the distance for him to shoot at. He pops his hydro-acoustic consumable just to make sure that nothing's going to come sneaking up around the headland of this island, and of course as he does, he spots torpedoes. And that can only mean that the enemy destroyer is likely in the vicinity. And there, in fact, is a smokescreen right over there, and that could indicate the enemy destroyer is back over there. Now the enemy destroyer is just the Tier 6, but it's the Tier 6 premium version of the Fubuki, which means it is actually a decent little boat and could be a serious problem for anybody who runs into it, especially with those 9 torpedoes. Now, friendly cruiser up there sails pretty much out in the open and meets his demise as he runs into the entirety of the anger of all of the enemy team's guns. And of course, he would have died from torpedoes anyway. Again, there's a lot to do with that destroyer. Enemy team isn't really particularly interested in capping their bases, and as a result, Bastion's team is going to gain the points lead. Even if the enemy team does start managing to kill a lot of ships really quickly, Bastion and his team have a massive points advantage. He manages to set that enemy battleship on fire, but the battleship gets taken out before the fires can do too much damage. Which is unfortunate. Kill a little bit denied there. Still though, he's done a good amount of damage so far in this battle. More torpedoes coming his direction. Those are from that enemy Scharnhorst there. But he quickly moves forward and doesn't have to worry about them. Now he's got himself into a little bit of a predicament here as he finds that the enemy battleships have come around the headland of those islands and he's out in the open. As anybody in a cruiser can attest, if you find yourself in this kind of situation, you can really only hope and pray that the enemy battleships decide to ignore you and not cause you problems. His smokescreen's back up again and again. With the premium smoke consumable, you can really utilize this ship effectively and have a lot of smoke screens. Enemy destroyer pops up there, but he's behind the islands there, so he's not able to get shots off at him and kill him, which has been unfortunate. The enemy team manages to kill a couple more ships as Bastion manages to set that Colorado on fire. The other thing that this ship gets that her Soviet counterparts don't get, and that her British counterpart, the Belfast, doesn't get, is torpedoes, and they're 8-kilometer torpedoes. While the Soviets do get torpedoes, they're generally only last-ditch effort weapons, such as 4 to 6 kilometers. So the Kutazov gets her 8-kilometer cruiser torpedoes, and they've actually got a reasonable angle from which you can fire them. You don't have to turn your ship completely broadside in order to get them away. Beaches himself on the back of the island and dodges the torpedoes from that enemy destroyer. Manages to secure a kill on that enemy destroyer as he pops his hydro and spots him by hitting him with a secondary and detonating him. Wonderful. Secondary close quarters expert on a destroyer with a Kutazov. Now he's got all these battleships up here, and he's basically got to run to leave his smokescreen, because that smokescreen is not going to last forever, and if you're going to get going, you might as well get going sooner rather than later. Enemy Colorado is pushing into the camp, and he's got himself a bit of a situation because he's got this Amagi, a Colorado, and a Bismarck all shooting at him. The torpedoes on one side of his ship are not yet reloaded, and that's a little bit of a problem. He does manage to secure the kill, though, on the Colorado by burning him to death. Now the real question is, can he secure yet another kill? Preferably on one of the other battleships, preferably on one of them trying to cap, which is the Bismarck. And the Bismarck is fairly low health here, so he might be able to do it, but he does have to be careful not to turn too far broadside, or he's going to have a bad time, as the shots from that ship could kill him. But it doesn't matter, that Bismarck ends up succumbing to the friendly team's fire, and Bastion manages to get away. But you'll notice that even the shots that did hit him, he didn't take any citadels. Most of it was just regular penetration damage. When you're angled in this ship, you can do surprisingly well. And again, I've seen shots bounce off the front of this ship from cruisers and battleships alike, with people on the receiving end either laughing at me or people on the dealing end proclaiming what the fuck. At this point, his team has got it pretty locked up as the enemy team has failed to secure any of the caps. So at this point, the only reason that they're not out of the game is because they do have some kills. The question is, how is this game going to end? Is the enemy team going to hit 0 points? Or is Bastion's team going to hit 1,000 points? First, the two remaining battleships on this side of the map are both together, making them nice, easy targets for the team on this side to shoot at. So, Might as well just farm that damage, but they hit 1,000 points before he can get his shots away. So that battle lasts 10 minutes. He does 135,000 damage in that game, earning himself a close quarters, a devastating strike with that close quarter, and of course a first blood and a Confederate for his efforts. He did pretty good shooting down aircraft, managed 1 torpedo hit, 1 flooding, and a good number of shots that hit a good number of fires, which is also a really good aspect of this ship. Top of his scheme for XP earned at over 2,200 base XP, almost 1,000 base XP higher than the next nearest player on his team. Very good game and a very good handling of this Tier 8 Soviet premium cruiser, the Mikhail Kutazov. Anyway, that's it for today's video, folks. If you like the video, hit that like button, hit the subscribe button, and leave a comment down below. If you'd like to get semi-regular news and channel updates, you can do so by liking and following me on Facebook. If you'd like to help support me and the channel, you can do so by becoming my supporter on Patreon. Any support level will grant you early access to some of my World of Warships replays and files. If you've got a replay like this one that you'd like to see featured on my channel, you can send it to my email. And if you'd like to watch me play World of Warships live, among other games, usually Sundays at 10 a.m. Pacific Standard or Pacific Daylight Time, you can do so by following me on Twitch. You can find the links for all of those in the video description down below. And as always, I'll see you next time. This is Captain Rye, signing off.